I am, however, honored to be with you here today and to represent some perspective from Canada's largest business network. And just a little note about the network. We are a family of connected chambers across the country, and as you know, one of the organizers of this is the Whitehorse Chamber of Commerce, and they are my member. So I work for Andre and team, working at the national level to make sure we have strong businesses and a healthy economy to enable a better life for all across Canada. And in our work nationally, we have been leaning into the important topic of Canada's future when it comes to the Arctic. And we hosted a really key dialogue on this in Ottawa in December. And at that event, we had the pleasure of hearing from Natan Obed, president of Tipuri Kenatami. And at the event, he said so many important and wise things. But I thought I would just start with a quote that he wrote in an op-ed where he said, "Almost nobody who is imagining the future of the Arctic lives here, and few have even visited." I thought it was such an important quote, and I just wanted to share. I'm a visitor. I come from the outside, and this is my first time in the Yukon. Not my first time in the north, but my first time in the Yukon. And I am excited to learn as I'm here over the next few days and deepen my understanding of the economic realities and that you all know so much more about. And those connections are so important, then I can do a better job at helping build business success here. Just a little bit about me. While I'm not a northerner, I do know what it's like to have a bit of a different experience than so many other Canadians. My family farms in rural Saskatchewan, and growing up, I just thought it was normal to have to haul our drinking water, to not have real internet until COVID came along, and to need to be prepared for going days without electricity if needed, because those redundancies just aren't there if something should happen. So I do start from that appreciation, at least, that there are challenges, and we have to really take seriously, as we've already heard about today, the glaring inadequacies in infrastructure, and even more importantly, that as we explore solutions, that they're developed and they work here, and they respect the realities, ways of life, and are in fact targeted to work here. So as Hannah said, it's a moment for the Arctic, and as Anne already challenged us this morning, we need to really focus on action and execution. So just a little bit about this moment we're in. We have world powers poking around the idea of the Arctic as a critical place, and I'll leave most of that to hear from Mr. Wayne Eyre, who will be up here shortly. But we have treated the North as more of a national symbol than what I think we'd like to see as a key valued economic region. And as a result, there has been neglect and underdevelopment by successive governments and all political stripes. And now we find ourselves in this moment where we simply cannot allow foreign agents to take more of an interest in the Arctic than we do as Canadians. Recently, though, this combination of external geopolitical pressures, massive shifts, the domestic convergence of economic planning, there are so many moving parts and pieces. So now we have, hopefully, realized this permanent shift from stagnancy to urgency. Over the past year, our tumultuous relationship with the US has put Canada in a place where we need to face head-on the economic vulnerabilities we have, in fact, been patching over with our more limited approach to trade. The shakeup has only proved what the private sector already knows. No business can survive forever with only one customer. We cannot replace that deeply rooted economic relationship with the US, nor do we want to. It continues to be overwhelmingly good for both countries and our competitiveness, which is why I'll say the upcoming CUSMA review in the next few months is so important. But going beyond that for a moment, the unfortunate truth is that these geopolitical tensions have escalated, and our safety, stability, both economic and national, are no longer guaranteed, and we must act. And while it's, I think, a sad fact that Canada's interest in the North is now somewhat reactive than proactive, and we might feel we're behind, let's use this momentum and use that to our advantage. However, I will say that in my view, momentum and shifting or changing our national posture and level of ambition isn't something we're that great at in Canada. And it has frustrated me and across my entire career in business as I worked a lot globally and would look back over oceans to the home front and be frustrated Canada wasn't positioned more competitively and actually winning globally in significant ways. So I'm going to talk about some of how we've put ourselves in that position. Because in business, we want to get that flywheel going. We want to get action and execution going. But if you have so much friction against a flywheel, it is hard to get that momentum and to take that action we need to take. So some of the barriers, we'll hear a lot over today and tomorrow about the infrastructure needed. We will touch probably heavily on workforce, which is also extremely important as we look at challenges there. But I wanted to just touch on regulatory and the red tape issue we have in this country. So at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, we have dug into this through our Business Data Lab, and I think we need to talk about it and look at some of the numbers. So Canada's federal regulatory burden has grown steadily over the past 20 years. In the past couple of years, we're starting to address this, but if you look at the time frame since 2006, we have ballooned on the regulatory front. We have imposed a 1.7% drag on our GDP ourselves. We have put that there. And that means we're less competitive, and we have taken, in that time frame, a 9% hit to business investment. So we often say that's like having a big hole in the boat. So people might come with capital and be like, oh my gosh, this regulatory environment, it's such a headwind that then they take that capital to other countries, other regions, south of the border and beyond, because it's easier to do business elsewhere. So there are many consequences to that regulatory burden. The red tape slows us down and puts us at a competitive disadvantage, and that's something we're working in partnership with the government on. We had a red tape summit in December with Treasury Board, but there is a lot of work to do there. We need our businesses working at what they do best, not spending millions and millions of hours on those regulations and filling out the forms. So the message from Canada's national business community to government is simple. Treat the North as a strategic economic priority, and let's get some action on the headwinds and the tailwinds, and control what we can control. So you heard there's some positive things happening. The announcement of the Arctic Infrastructure Fund, these are great things. We'd love to see the coordinated strategy to the North. And for this to happen, of course, we're all talking about and committed to the Indigenous partnerships are not optional. It is actually our advantage and our way forward. And I'm going to come back to Natin Obed and something else he did say when he keynoted at our meeting in December. Through treaties, land management, and long-standing presence across much of the North, Canada possesses a foundation for Arctic leadership that few other nations can claim. And as we know from business leaders who have successfully and beneficially partnered with Indigenous communities in the North, consultation is just the starting point. It's not it. What is it is the meaningful partnerships that develop, and those meaningful partnerships extend to skills development, employment opportunities, business opportunities for Indigenous-owned firms, and long-term benefits embedded in every single project. And that has been my experience in business and learning what it means to have meaningful partnerships. So coming back maybe to some of the tone Anne set for us in her comments this morning, business does know how to drive change. And business is here through the terms that government has. And so we believe that we are good partners, and we urge the government to use the time they have to provide the longer-term certainty and critical investment incentives so that Northern and Indigenous businesses can get to work and really start executing. So long-term certainty. There's, I think if you Googled what's been one of the biggest words of 2025 talked about, it's certainty, or the lack thereof. But I think what's so important is to focus on what we can control. And from a government perspective, probably the two most obvious things we can control to really help ourselves in this moment is on the procurement front, and as I mentioned, the regulatory front. So the government's recently announced defense industrial strategy is an astronomical opportunity for Canadian companies, but I do worry, what kind of defense supply chain can we build when contract decisions take longer than the life of a typical minority government? So we have to address the procurement systems before we try to put millions of dollars through in spending, and the regulatory support. We can't have projects being held up and frustrated with our regulatory system. And transformational change is hard. I worry that we'll tinker around the edges and not dive into a full transformation on that front, but we're working hard at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce to partner with government so we do have a regulatory system that can enable business and have processes that are reasonable, transparent, and predictable. So with that, I think I will just lean into my conclusion here so we can get on to Mr. Wayne Eyre's comments and our panel discussion. But I really do want to echo Hannah's comments about this being a moment, and I really do hope nobody takes their eyes off the ball, and I think it's on all of us to keep that focus on our shared economic security and the big picture for Canada. And let's not leave the future of the Arctic up to what's happening in the world, whether that's the White House or powers halfway around the globe. As interest in the Arctic continues to grow amongst Canadians and be more appreciated, governments and the private sector alike are partnering, and you can count on the Canadian Chamber of Commerce to be a strong, reliable partner and a steadfast ally in amplifying and advancing the voices and interests of people of the North. So I look forward to the next few days and harnessing the Northern know-how and learning more myself so I can be a good advocate and leader as we shape the future of our economy, our country, and most importantly, our communities. Thank you.